All right, if you're carrying something, or you have, or whether you are today, or if it's something you really remember in the past, something big, you're carrying something in your life, whether it's something you've done to someone else, or something that's been done, or just has happened to you, I think today's topic will resonate with you. I'm Pastor Ben, and I have a disease called sin, and I'm glad you're here at Genesis. Welcome. What we talk about every single week here is the new beginning is possible through the power of God's love. And I'm glad you're here with me because I need that new beginning every single day. I do. In small ways and in big ways. And one of the reasons why I say this community has to be free from judgment and full of God's love is because I know I've learned, especially even over the 2 years that Genesis has existed, I've learned that it needs to be a place where you feel safe, where you feel like you can share your struggles, things you're working through, burdens that you're carrying, and know that you're not going to be judged for that. And so being full of God's love is just being present with one another and loving one another, and this is the type of community I pray constantly that Genesis would be. Hope, healing, and growth is really the new beginning that God offers. He offers us hope, He offers healing, He offers growth. And hope and healing, those two words are two words I want you to think about today. I told you I have that disease called sin. Because I have that disease, there are many symptoms that play out in my life, and hope is an outside-in thing, okay? Every day, I think every day is an exercise of looking for hope in something. I don't know if you agree with me on that one or not, but every day wake up and there's some sort of hope that kind of gets you through the day, whether it's a paycheck or kind words from something or that one thing you're looking forward to that you're excited to take part in for that day. But hope is an outside-in thing, and as God's love works that way, it's an outside-in hope. I look to Jesus, I look to His Word, and I hear His voice, and He comes to me. So hope is outside in. It has to come from outside of myself because I have that disease, right? Healing, however, and this is what we'll be talking about today, and really the next several weeks, is healing. And healing is an inside-out experience, okay? So hope is outside in. I set my eyes on that hope. So Christ, Jesus, God's love, His Word comes to me, offers me hope. Healing is when His Word and when His truth really works on my heart and He starts to heal me from the inside out. And the problem with healing, and I do this all the time, I want to heal from the outside in. I treat everything, so I reverse the two. I'll look within myself for hope. So I treat hope like it's an inside-out thing, and I treat healing like it's an outside-in thing. Hopefully that makes sense. So I look inside myself for hope. I have to find hope inside myself, and how do I heal? Well, I fix everything around me. And the way God talks to me, what the Bible teaches actually, is that hope, like I said, is an outside-in thing, and healing is God working on me from the inside out. And it's a beautiful way to think about it. And we're going to work on healing together by listening to Jesus' words as He was dying on the cross. And I can't think of a more powerful expression of love than Jesus Himself giving His life and then speaking while He was dying. And the words that He speaks are powerful. You'll see in just a second the words we're going to be focusing on. All right, so 2 others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with Jesus. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified Him, and the criminals, one on His right and one on His left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And they cast lots to divide His garments. And the people stood by watching, but the rulers scoffed at Him, saying, "He saved others, let Him save Himself, if He is the Christ of God, His chosen one." The soldiers also mocked Him, coming up and offering Him sour wine and saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over Him, "This is the King of the Jews." So you look back at that first section there where Jesus said, He's hanging on a cross, He's dying, and people are mocking Him, casting down curses on Him, and Jesus hasn't done anything wrong. And His words in response are, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He prays for them. Incredibly powerful. And I've found that when you listen to Jesus' voice, you listen to His words, they have the power to create amazing healing in your life. And for me personally, I found that Jesus' words have a way of disarming me in ways that my own words simply cannot. Because when I look at the world around me, I tend to get hard. I harden my heart to the things around me, but Jesus softens my heart, especially when I see how he behaves in a way that's contrary to my own behavior. Life is full of joy, and the Bible talks about joy quite a bit. And St. Paul he wrote the letter to the Philippians. We're not going to get into all this, but he talks about his joy being complete when he looks around and he sees everybody really living as God designed us to live. Joy is complete when things are running the way God designed them to run, and when I'm loving as I'm called to love, and other people are loving me as they're called to love me. It's a beautiful thing, and he's actually really talking about the church, which is oftentimes thought of as just this institution, this place you go to, and he was talking about it as this community, as this beautiful thing. When everything's operating as it's supposed to be, you see joy. But the reason why life can be so frustrating is because when you look around, you don't see things that make you joyful, and if anything, it makes you frustrated. Turn on the news, watch the politicians, or see the latest tragedies that's occurred, or just look in your own home. Think about your own relationships, and you can get really frustrated. Life can leave us wounded very easily. You live long enough, this doesn't take very long, and you find yourself wounded. And I think it's important to think about being wounded as not like sometimes when I talk about, we need healing, it's tempting to think that what I'm talking about are those deep scars where you've been impaled by something. And I think everybody in this room could probably share of a time in your life when you felt like you just got torn open. And I need to heal from that. And even today, you're struggling to heal from that gaping wound that just lacerated your soul, okay? But I would say that every single day brings moments where you're going to have to heal. And things tend to scab over a little quicker than other things. Just an unkind word here or an unpleasant encounter at Meijer can sometimes leave you a little annoyed. I touched on one there. But you can also have things like ongoing conflicts, like in your own home, where it feels like you're just getting hit with a baseball bat over and over and over, and it just can leave you feeling like you're like just a battered and bruised individual. So life can leave us wounded, and I'm just going to highlight 3 different ways that you can find yourself wounded. One would be wrongs done to us. So so I talked about holding on to things, something that somebody else did to me. And it's not something that I could control, it's something that was done to me, okay? It can leave you hurt. It can leave you scarred, and that's happened to me. And what's most frustrating about being wounded in this way is like when I've had that happen to me, the most frustrating part is there's nothing I can do. I can't control that other person. And so it's hard to heal while also enduring somebody else constantly hurting you, especially if you're in the midst of it. In some cases, that can also be something that you remember in the past. Maybe you're not presently going through it, but it's left you scarred. Wrongs that we've done to others. These are also things that we hold on to, and it can be very easy to carry them around when you think about the way you've deeply hurt people in your lives. Hurtful can be a hurtful word here. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Sock in mouth, foot in mouth moment. Sock in mouth, whatever you want to put in your mouth. Shouldn't have said that, okay? Shouldn't have said that. Or it could have been something where and in our personal relationships, these are where we can wound people the most, I would say, in our closest relationships. Because when you know somebody really well, when you live with somebody, you know exactly where they hurt most. And when you want to hurt them, you can hurt bad. And that's why it's in our closest relationships that the deepest wounds oftentimes form. And that's why I think childhood abuse, when a child's abuse you have this relationship with a parent, it's supposed to be this beautiful thing, but when you've been abused by that parent, it carries with you forever. Third one, wrongs that just happen. I got to include those because it's easy to hang on to that too. And I was just, talking to Rhonda. She's her sister who's dying of cancer, and you think about that kind of stuff. Sure, there's forms of cancer where smoking and that kind of stuff can lead to it, but there's also cancer. There's cancer that just happens. I've shared my father. It just happened. There's other things that just happened. I just got in a car accident. It wasn't like I was driving recklessly or anything, and it just happened. And maybe circumstances just take place. A tornado hits a town, people die, things just happen. It's crazy, but it leaves you scarred and wounded. And part of the woundedness is not just going through that experience and living in the aftermath, but also having to reconcile that with a God who loves me. That can be tough. So think about all those three things, and think about maybe what are ways right now in your own life that you need the most healing. What are you carrying with you? What are some things, you imagine those stone being carried by those people in that video? What is the thing that you're hanging on to? And the question we have to ask today then is, how do we heal? How do we heal? The temptation, I would say when we want to heal is, as I said before, is to treat it like an outside-in exercise. Okay? And I'm going to give you some actual good examples here. Okay, temptation is to treat healing like it's at first an external exercise. I'm going to give you good examples here. For example, if I change my circumstances, avoid, confront. Now let me explain something to you here. These can actually be things you sometimes have to do. Sometimes for your own sanity and safety, you need to avoid a person. Okay? You can't control somebody else, and so sometimes you need to do that. But I don't think that this is the first thing that, for me, as a Christian, the first thing I would look to. Secondly, apologize and make amends. Good things to do. And this is part of the healing process, but I wouldn't say it's the first thing. That's why looking to my higher power, looking to Jesus, this is what I'm getting to eventually. I start with Jesus, okay? And I can get to these things. But you see how the gut reaction for me always is to say, well, if I just change my circumstances, I can take care of it, and I don't need to worry about, dealing with what this is actually doing to me. I can apologize and make amends rather than really working through it. And third one, accept the things I cannot change, and that's true. There are times I have to accept the things I cannot change. Good things. But just first doing that, without first setting my eyes on my hope and having Him work in my heart, you can develop a distorted image of healing. I've found in my own life there have been times where I've thought I've healed and I haven't, because I've just been doing the surface thing. I want you to consider this. Self-managers placed Jesus on the cross. And the reason why I brought up this, the reason I brought up this is because my natural tendency is to manage my life externally. And so if I need to heal, what do I need to do? Tell me what I need to do, I'll fix it. And I'd say, well, what do you need to do first is you need to set your eyes on Jesus. He's your hope. Okay? Let Him work on you. We're going to get to this other stuff. We're going to get to it. We're going to talk about the things you need to do. But remember that it's not first and foremost about me managing my life myself on my own. And a good reminder for me is that self-managers were the very people that stuck Jesus on the cross. Two groups of people are identified in that reading earlier. You have basically the Pharisees, the religious leaders, okay, the people that were offended by Jesus, and you have the Roman soldiers. They're the two people that Jesus is really saying, Father, forgive them, because they're the ones responsible for putting Him there. The religious leaders were prideful people. They had their own way of doing things. They were focused on externals. That was how they looked at their lives. And for them, the most important thing was to project an image to people. Look at me. I got my life together. And Jesus, see, this is what Jesus does. He cut them straight to the heart. He basically looked at them and said, no, you're sinners. And you're all about washing the outside, meanwhile, on the inside, you're totally unclean. You have that disease, but you refuse to admit that you have it. Instead, you're comparing yourself to everybody else and saying, oh, look, I'm doing way better than those people over there. Well, how did the religious leadership respond? They responded by putting Him on a cross. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Religion is a word that's oftentimes used to describe the stuff that's done, like in the context of like a worship service, or the practices in regards to my relationship with God. And they're not bad things. The problem is when those religious practices become you have to do it this way. And this is the problem with those religious leaders. That's what they were doing. They were basically saying, you have to do this, and if you don't do this, you can't have a relationship with God. And there's dangers on that side, but there's also, of course, dangers on the other side, saying, I don't have to do anything. Consider the Roman soldiers. So you have the Pharisees on one side, religious leaders. They have their lives micromanaged. I put on this image, okay, and Jesus tells me what I don't want to hear, so I'm just going to put him on the cross. I'm going to ignore him. I'm not going to let him actually have an impact on my heart. Roman soldiers, on the other hand, were just completely superficial and just deranged. Those soldiers who nailed Jesus to the cross were basically the bottom of the barrel for Roman soldiers. It wasn't something you volunteered to. Oh yeah, I want to be on the torture squad. We didn't do that. For them, it was, could you imagine on a regular basis, your job was to beat somebody half to death. Your job was to put nails through their hands, hang people from a beam, and basically turn them into carrion for birds. That was your job. What would you do? How would that kind of a life impact you? It doesn't surprise me that they mocked Jesus too. For them, Jesus was just another guy, another dude, another person they were hanging on a cross and executing, and they weren't interested in what was actually taking place there. And I think that's the other temptation. You have, I'm going to manage my life my own way over here, and you have the Roman soldiers who are saying, I'm going to manage my life this way, and for them it was just basically ignoring, minimizing, kind of numbing the pain. You get the sense that they were kind of drunken fools is what is the picture that you're given. And they're the ones that stuck Jesus there. And Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do. Question we should ask ourselves is, do we know what we're doing half the time? And that's a good question. It's not an excuse. The Bible tells me, okay, certain things that I should do, okay? But I always thought, I'll give you this is a silly example. I used to teach, I taught at a high school for 3 years, and as a high school teacher, I didn't have any kids at the time. I always used to think, all these parents, they don't know what the heck they're doing. They should be doing this with their kid. They should be doing that with their kid. Then I had kids of my own. And I realized it's not as easy as it looks. And it's easy to say, well, you should do this, and you should do this, and just do this, but then you find yourself in the midst of crazy circumstances in your life, the insanity of finding yourself struggling with addiction, or somebody else struggling with addiction, or somebody else who's hurting you, or just a dangerous, absolutely destructive relationship, and suddenly you have no idea what you're doing. But everybody else does, but they're not in it, you see. And this is my point. This is why relationships are important, and it's important for us to have discussions and to talk, because so often we don't know what we're doing. And when we're in a community such as this, it's so important to remember the reason why we gather together is because Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. I'll say that one more time. Jesus knew exactly what he was doing, because it was our not knowing what we're doing that led Jesus to the cross. The people who put him there literally on that day, and us every single day, I would say every single time that I try to manage my own life and say, Jesus, I don't want to listen to what you have to say, I'm nailing to that cross too. And Jesus went there though because he knew exactly what I needed. Jesus, if you think of Jesus himself, I believe Jesus is the Son of God, God himself, in the flesh. And the Bible tells us that Jesus was there at the beginning when the world was created. Do you think he'd know what he's doing? And yet he's there hanging on a cross. So the very being through whom, as it says in John 1, through whom the entire world was created, came down to my level and put himself on a cross. Because he looks at me and he says, you're lost without me. You need me. And so I'm going up there, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness for you because you don't know what you're doing. Healing takes place when head knowledge becomes heart knowledge. Okay? I want you to get that in your head. Head knowledge becomes heart knowledge. And this is something that I've just been thinking about more and more lately. And this is why I've enjoyed just sitting, imagining myself sitting at the foot of the cross listening to Jesus. Because I can say things like, oh yeah, Jesus died for me a long time ago. And people say that. I believe. Do you believe in Jesus? I believe in Jesus. Good. That's great. Well, that's head knowledge. It becomes heart knowledge when I can say, Jesus died for me. I can say, this is what it means. Jesus died for me. He said, he forgave me. He loved me so much, he forgave me. But do I really know what forgiveness means? See, if you understand what forgiveness means, it's powerful. It's huge. Like, this is just one example of how head knowledge becomes heart knowledge. When I say Jesus died for me, that's great. That's head knowledge. When I say Jesus died for me, I can say Jesus forgave me. And there's so many different ways of defining forgiveness. People, and this is why people get confused. What does forgiveness mean? Does it mean I forget? Does it mean that I no longer feel have any struggles with what happened in the past? No. What forgiveness means is really this, taking on the weight of someone's debt. I think this is probably the best definition you give for forgiveness, because when you look to somebody else, and you say, I forgive you, what you're basically saying is, I'm going to take on the weight of your debt. What you owe me, I'm going to take it on. I used this example a little bit last week, but I'm going to use it again. Imagine you have huge amount of debt, credit card debt. Nobody in here has ever had credit card debt, I'm sure. Imagine you have like $10,000 of credit card debt. And maybe I'm just going to pick a random number, okay? If you called the credit card company and said, I can't pay it, I need you to take that away, what would they say? Sure, you're good, clean slate, no problem, you don't have to pay that debt, no way. Of course they're not going to say that. Of course they're not going to say it, because why do you have the debt? Why is there credit card debt? Bingo! It's my own fault. I'm the one swiping that card over and over and over, acting like it's free money. And when I go, what really I'm doing, it may be money I don't have in my own bank account, but I'm using somebody else's money. And so I'm building up this debt. And so asking for forgiveness is the equivalent of basically looking at that credit card company and saying, would you please take this away? And the credit card company look at you and saying, I forgive you, I'll take it. Now do you kind of understand the weight of forgiveness? The burden of saying, I forgive you. It's not just, take it. This is why I always tell people that if you're going to look at someone and say, I forgive you, what you're really saying is, I'm not going to hold this over your head anymore, because I'm taking the weight of those hurtful words that you spoke to me, I'm taking it on my shoulders, I'm going to absorb it, because I forgive you, and I'm not going to hold that against you anymore. And so this is exactly what I want you to think about. Consider the weight of your own wrongs. Think about the things you've done, and think about that. If that credit card example helps you, use that as a way of thinking about it. Think about the things that you've done. Long time ago, could be yesterday, could be today. Little things, big things. Consider the weight of it all. Do you now recognize what you're asking when you say, Lord, forgive me? You're saying, I have all this baggage, all this weight. Here you go, Lord, take it. This is why the more I've pondered that word of forgiveness, what we do here, after we're going to be doing this just a little bit, when we ask God for forgiveness, I want you to consider that word. It's so easy to just pass it over and say forgiveness. But if you think about what is behind that word, it's incredibly powerful. Lord, I want you to take the pain I've inflicted upon others. I want you to take all the anxiety and fear that I'm carrying in my life. I want you to take all the thoughts, words, actions, all that. I want you to take it all, Lord. And when you look at Jesus on the cross, what you hear is this. It's insane. It's absolutely insane for me to ask God for forgiveness. But what you see on the cross, what you hear from Jesus, is Jesus asking for you. As he's being crucified, as he's hanging on that cross, in the act of being wounded, he is asking for your healing. Father, it's prayer. Father, he's appealing, he's saying, Father, forgive me. Speaking to God, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. But Jesus did. He knew exactly what he's doing. And you see, it's because of Jesus. It's because of Jesus that you can know that your Father looks at you, your Heavenly Father looks at you, and says, yes, the weight has been taken, the weight has been carried by Jesus. That's the image there. God taking on the weight of everything that's been done, that I am doing. And what he does is he reminds me that there is great joy in life. I take this weight from you. Be joyful. Enjoy life, and enjoy life in the way that I created you to enjoy life. As I talked about earlier, that's what joy is. How was I designed to live? How was I designed to live in a relationship with other people instead of holding things above other people's heads? Or when I forgive, I can live in joy. Consider this. God forgives us because of Jesus. Okay? That's why. Not because of anything I've done. God forgives because of Jesus. And because of Jesus, we forgive others. And we seek to take their debts on. There's a direct connection. And that's why I say that healing is something that can't start externally. It's got to start by setting my eyes on the hope I have in Jesus. Hearing those words, Father, forgive them, recognizing the great pain, the cost, and then realize with my heart that this was something that God did for me. He took all this on. I am forgiven. I am loved. And what really happens there through God's grace, through that unconditional love that he shows me, is he fills me up in the inside. And he points me out here and reminds me that because of that great love shown to me, I'm called to love other people as God made me to love. I seek to forgive. And my hope is in your own life as you ponder that and as you allow God to heal you. If there's somebody that you know in your own life that you need to forgive, you'll find the opportunity to do the same thing. Father, help me to forgive them. Help me to love them. And as you do so, remember the words that Jesus spoke to you. Even as you're nailing his hands to that cross. Beautiful, powerful words.